Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am here to talk about Rolando Bedoya versus Jai Herbert. My prediction for this fight is Jai Herbert wins by decision. But it's not something I can put too much faith in because, first of all, Jai Herbert doesn't win too many decisions. He's a pretty potent finisher. And secondly, Rolando Bedoya, if the fight's going to the scorecards, I know Bedoya's got pressure on his side. He's the guy who's pressuring his opponent always. And to back up all that pressure, he's got durability and cardio. So he's probably a guy that makes for a good point fighter. And he showed a lot of these great traits of his in his loss to Chaos Williams, where losing to Chaos should not look like that, especially on short notice, which I think it was. But Bedoya's style was there for him. He was in Chaos Williams' face, bringing the pressure, and gave him a tooth and nail battle that really could have gone either way. But also, he's never been finished. He's only got 3 losses, all of them by decision. And again, the guy's got that pressure where he will get in your face. He'll find a way to. Even against a guy who's a sharper striker with better reach and height in Jai Herbert, I think Rolando Bedoya will be slipping and fainting and kicking his way into punching range because he just wants to corner you and tee off on you. But the basis for the pick is that I think if Jai Herbert does get caught with a Bedoya in his face, Jai Herbert's got ways of slowing the fight down. I'd envision him getting the better of the clinch and grappling fighting, to be frank. Jai Herbert's not much of a grappler on paper anyway. He's only got one submission and it's 10 years ago. But he's shown enough in his UFC fights where I think he can handle himself against Bedoya and also rough him up in spots. But he is the sharper striker, Jai Herbert, and half my basis for picking him is that I think his chin is off the table in this matchup. His chin is the biggest liability between either guy, and I don't know if I should say it's off the table, because if Bedoya does get in his face, he could crack it. But Rolando Bedoya definitely does not have the power of big fucking Francisco Trinaldo and Ilya Taporia and even Reese McKee. Reese McKee knocked out Jai Herbert on the regional scene over in England. And Reese has not looked like such a big knockout threat since he's made it to the UFC. But his career is filled with them. He's a much more dangerous guy than he's appeared to be in the UFC. So I don't think Bedoya can match the power and danger of any of those guys. And I also think, look, Bedoya's only got 4 TKOs. There's one that I haven't seen, and it was a round 3 TKO with like a minute left. So it stands to reason it either took place on the ground or was due to exhaustion. But I don't think he clipped a chin. Plus, it's not listed as a knockout. Another one he had is a doctor stoppage. Another one he pounded the guy out from the back mount in round 3. And the one that you can even consider a KO was a head kick, but it was a light head kick. And the guy that ate it, he didn't go unconscious or anywhere close. He just did such a shitty job defending himself. He was shelling up, and it looked like he didn't know how to defend. As soon as the fight was stopped, he popped up to his feet to protest, which didn't matter. He didn't defend himself. He should have lost. But I'm saying all this just to say I have doubt in the stopping power of Rolando Bedoya. I don't think he's got the stopping power to stop Jai Herbert. Even though Jai Herbert is 36 years old now, and again, the knockout losses have been there. But on that basis, I think Jai should survive the danger of Rolando Bedoya, and I envision him getting the better of Rolando. At range, certainly, but if Rolando is crowding him, like I do envision him doing, I think Jai Herbert can still rough him up on the inside. He just can't let himself get teed off on. He's got to have outs, whether it's his footwork or crashing into him and turning it into a clinch fight, which again, I think Jai Herbert would win. He's looked good in clinch and on the ground in some close fights he's had in the UFC, roughing some guys up. Kyle Nelson, Ludovic Klein, Farasiam, which was a very, very close fight. But I just envision him having a little too much for Rolando Bedoya. He was submitted once, Jai Herbert, and it was to Renato Moicano. No shame there. Moicano's a fucking beast. And I believe he would do the same to Rolando Bedoya. But still, Jai Herbert He's not so much of a submission threat himself, even though we've seen him work in some subs in these last few fights. He's only got one submission on his record, and it's 10 years ago. So he's not such a big threat on the ground himself as far as submission grappling goes. Rolando Bedoya has never been finished. All three of his losses are by decision. He did lose after making his debut against Chaos Williams. He lost to Kenan Song in his last fight. That was a fight where his pressure was there for him early, and I really liked the way he looked. I thought it was going to be a bad matchup for Kenan, where Bedoya was in his face, but he was able to figure him out. I think he had the requisite power to stop Bedoya in his tracks, and he was able to rough him up and win a decision. Bedoya's victories include 7 by finish, 7 by decision. I listed all of his knockouts, but he's also got 3 submissions, the last of which was a Darce choke over this guy Pablo Dorta. That's his last win, and it was a solid victory. But that's his last submission win in a long time. The last one comes 7 years. The previous one, I should say, comes 7 years before that. So I think neither guy can really capitalize on a hole on the ground. I think it would really be the points to be scored would be scored by top position. And even though neither guy is really known as much of a wrestler, I think Jai Herbert's the better physical force in there. And I think he would rough up Rolando Bedoya and get the better of him in tight. Bedoya, though, he's got so many great traits, more than a few round 3 finishes, or at least a few of them anyway. But they've been there for him. The one before that Pablo fight, he put this guy Mauricio away with a round 3 finish. That was a fight in which he was rocked early, hit with a big punch and was staggering and kind of staggered his way right into a rear naked choke. But he was able to survive, turned it around, and then ground the guy down to nothing and pounded him out round 3. That's that round 3 TKO that I have seen. So he's shown so many great traits, but since he's leveled up, despite how he looked against Chaos Williams, he is 0-2. And on top of all that, I don't think he's got the danger in particular to threaten a guy like Jai Herbert. So I envision this being a decision battle that Jai Herbert wins. I think he's the sharper striker at range, and once Bedoya gets inside, he's going to have a few more tricks in the clinch, and we'll be able to rough him up. So the pick is Jai Herbert winning by decision. I've bet a little bit on Jai Herbert, but, I'll wait to the prop, see if anything jumps out. And on the flip side, I'd say if Bedoya was the win, I'd pick it to be decision over knockout, even though most of the time I trust the losses on a guy's record. But if anything stood out where it was some drastic line, I'd probably bet on it because it's not like I don't have doubt in the chin of Jai Herbert. And that is the breakdown. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.